it going, guys and girls? Axel Williams here, back with another video, and this one is about the major problem that George Lucas had with the prequels. Now, if you're watching this video, and even if you're not, there's millions of us around the world. It's like a cult, isn't it? We love Star Wars. We love Star Wars. I remember being a young child playing the Phantom Menace game on the PlayStation 1, Star Wars Jedi Power Battles on the PlayStation 1, which was like a co-op version of the Phantom Menace. What a game that was. What a game that was. There were so many Star Wars games, wasn't there, as well, on the GameCube. I remember the GameCube had literally so many good Star Wars games, it was unreal. Now, a lot of people give the prequels a bad rap, and rightly so. You know, you've got Jar Jar Binks in there, for goodness sake. I mean, look at him. He's an absolute moron, isn't he? You know, if they weren't boring like the Phantom Menace, they were really, really cringy like Attack of the Clones. And if they weren't cringy like Attack of the Clones, they were just absolutely terrible like Revenge of the Sith. But I'm not going to pretend that they're absolutely terrible and that they're absolutely a sin against God, because have you seen The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and The Rise of Skywalker? Those three, morally, are far worse than the prequels. We're not going to dissect them individually. We're not going to talk about Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and then Revenge of the Sith. What we're going to do is do a combination of the three, and we're going to basically talk about the mistakes George Lucas made and the mistakes that followed through in each and every movie. But I have to start with Jar Jar Binks. I've got to start with Jar Jar Binks. It feels like a sin not to start with Jar Jar Binks. The big mistake George Lucas made with the Phantom Menace, and I'm not talking about it in any specific order, I'm just talking about the Phantom Menace in this instance. Jar Jar Binks. George Lucas meant for Jar Jar Binks to be the funniest Star Wars character ever. I mean, forget the fact that he was accidentally killing droids at the end of the film.
Bruh.
He was always up to no good, always acting stupid. Why would you do this to us, George? The love story between Anakin and Padme was the most forced thing on the planet. I mean, when she met Anakin, he was like a little kid. Did she have the hots for him then? But backing up a little bit, the biggest curse in each of the prequel movies was the fact that George Lucas prioritised special effects CGI over actual storyline. George Lucas was utterly obsessed with the CGI aspects of the Star Wars prequels. I mean, you had CGI clones. Do we need CGI clones? We don't actually need CGI clones. I can understand if you've got an army of clones and you want the front line to be real people, and then as they go further back you want the rest of them to be CGI characters. But some of the clones that interacted on camera were actually completely CGI models. And they weren't even good CGI models. They looked terrible. I mean, what's that? That looks like something out of a PlayStation 2 cutscene. Way too over-reliant on CGI, George Lucas, for the prequels. Way too over-reliant. Now, some people might think I'm being overly critical here in the way Anakin became Darth Vader, in the way Anakin turned to the dark side, but I just felt that it was almost kind of lazy the way they did it. Yes, he dreamt about his mother dying and it came true. He dreamt about Padme dying in childbirth, so you can understand his panic at this point. But I felt the one jump that they really didn't need to make was Anakin going from a whiny arsehole to a child murderer. The scene when he kills the children is a bit too overboard for me. It's a bit too much of a leap considering he's only just turned to the dark side. I think in reality, I'm doing this because I want to save Padme's life. Maybe I'm not doing it because I want to turn to the dark side. He's turning to the dark side to save Padme's life. He's not turning to the dark side so he can do terrible things, is he? But I know what Yoda said, anger leads to hatred, hatred leads to suffering, suffering leads to the dark side. Was it something like that? But I just think that leap from becoming Darth Vader in a quest to save Padme's life, and then going into a room and slaughtering about 10 children, that's like 0 to 80 in 0.5 seconds. And if we're looking at Attack of the Clones, well, you know, there's redeeming features about each of the prequels. There really is redeeming features. The battle droids, Jango Fett, Darth Maul, just to name a few. You know, there are some redeeming features about the prequels, but if we're looking directly at Attack of the Clones now, the romantic love story between Padme and Anakin was probably the most cringiest thing ever. I mean, he was literally like a psycho stalking pervert. And Padme thought, I like this psycho stalking pervert. It would be like me harassing the woman upstairs who lives above me, and her eventually thinking, oh, there's something sexy about this creep. I mean, come on, they had no chemistry. Padme and Anakin had no chemistry. It was literally Padme acting a bit shifty and awkward, and Anakin just acting like a complete paedophile. Apologies to any paedophiles out there, I didn't mean to offend you. If we're looking at it from the entirety of the prequels, the one that has the least redeeming features for me is Revenge of the Sith. But Revenge of the Sith is probably the most goofy one in all aspects. CGI is not particularly good in the movie either. I always thought the CGI in Revenge of the Sith is pretty ropey. And even for the time, I still think aspects of it are very cheesy. There's too much goofy stuff going on as well, the droids having little conversations with each other, saying silly things. And I'm not making out the prequels are the only ones that are guilty for that, because even the original three, you know, A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, there was goofy aspects about them at times. Probably not Empire Strikes Back. Empire Strikes Back was probably the most dark of the Star Wars movies. But Return of the Jedi obviously had the Ewoks, and the Ewoks were probably the most stupidest creation from George Lucas apart from Jar Jar Binks. I mean, that's an interesting battle, that is. I mean, that's a one-on-one I want to see. Not in that way. I don't want to see Jar Jar tonguing an Ewok. No, stop it. But it did feel with the prequels that George Lucas was almost secretly sabotaging his own movies. Because when you actually reflect back to those films, I can only probably name a couple of actual good scenes in each of them. You know, the Duel of the Fates with Darth Maul was absolutely iconic, probably the greatest fight scene in Star Wars history. You've got Anakin Skywalker, obviously, rescuing his mom when he attacks the Sand People, kills the Sand People, and that's the first time he shows real anger during the prequels. And Revenge of the Sith. What good moments are there in Revenge of the Sith? Forget Revenge of the Sith, I can't think of anything. But being truthful and being serious, the prequels were very poorly written in my view. Very poorly written, forced storylines, boring storylines, the most annoying side character in any movie ever, along with that little kid in the Temple of Doom. But George Lucas definitely dropped the ball with the prequels, and I've actually seen Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor actually talking about the prequels, saying, were they underrated? They were asked the question whether the prequels were underrated, and of course, they are going to say yes, they were. You know, Hayden Christensen basically put his name up in lights thanks to the Star Wars movies, thanks to George Lucas. Ewan McGregor played an iconic character thanks to George Lucas. They're not going to turn their back on the franchise. They're not going to say, oh, George Lucas was absolutely terrible. His writing was terrible. He was clueless during the prequels. He did so much wrong. He did this wrong. He did that wrong. He was terrible. He's a joke. He's a clown. They're not going to say any of that, are they? But the fact that that question's even being raised, that the prequels are underrated or the prequels are underappreciated, means that it's definitely an ongoing topic. But I still stand by my comments that they are a lot better than The Force Awakens, Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker, the main three that recently came out. Morally, they're just better. These modern three, they have no right in even existing. The story's finished, the Emperor's gone, everything's done, the story's been told. They have no right in even existing. So anyone who says that the modern three are better than the prequels, you know, these modern three shouldn't even exist. They shouldn't even exist. It's just cash grabbing. It's just making money off the Star Wars name. They have no care about the reputation of Star Wars. They just want to make money. They should not exist. But yes, guys, what do you think of the Star Wars prequels? Are they as bad as people say they are? A lot of people do actually still think that they're actually not as bad. I've spoken to a lot of people who actually like the prequels. There's a lot of people out there who like the prequels, who actually think that they are good films. Yes, they're difficult to watch, I think, at times. There's definitely a lot of segments within them that are very difficult to watch. They're not the best written. I don't think George Lucas really understood what he was doing when he was making those films. I think he had a thought in his mind, but I think somewhere it swayed off. And I do believe that George Lucas actually did most certainly prioritise CGI and the film looking good visually over the actual story and character development. I think that's a fact. He admitted after Phantom Menace that he actually might have overlooked a few things. Yeah. But in my view, George Lucas could have made the prequels a hell of a lot better. They could have been written a hell of a lot better. The characters could have been a lot better written. But there are redeeming features. Jango Fett, battle droids, destroyer droids, Darth Maul. There are so many redeeming features. Qui-Gon Jinn. There are loads of redeeming features about the prequels. There really are. Prequels, for me, offer some of the best ideas out of every Star Wars film ever made. Out of any Star Wars film ever made, I think the best individual ideas lie in the prequels. Ultimately, guys, are they as bad as people say they are? Guys, thanks so much for watching this video. I will be back very shortly with another interesting video, at least I hope so. Guys, don't forget to hit that like button and that subscribe button. Very much appreciated. Guys, thank you ever so much for watching. I will see you very soon for another interesting video.